we are a training institute, as you can see, and we do training. We also do research and consultancies, but majorly training. And some of our categories are listed here. We have M&D, data management, we have leadership, office admin, financial management, climate change, and the rest that are listed here. We have more categories. It's just that we couldn't fit everything on here. For the M&E courses, this is some of what we have. We have, like the one we are doing today, impact evaluation. For evidence-based development, we have advanced M&E and data management. For health programs, we have results-based M&E. We have project monitoring and evaluation with data management and analysis. Then we have the more specialized M&E training, M&E for community-based projects, for humanitarian programs, climate change adaptations, governance, food security, and also agriculture and health programs. Our learning modes are in person, which is a classroom. We also do virtual training or online instructor-led. And for the physical trainings, we do have 1 to 2 weeks training, depending on the one that you choose. Some of our locations are listed here. Again, we majorly train from Nairobi, Kenya, but we also have other locations, including South Africa, Dubai, Zanzibar, Nigeria, Uganda, Ghana, and also Singapore. And so we are located at least in every part of, especially Africa. Some of the countries we've trained we've trained more than 50 countries, and these are some of them. We have East Africa, South, West Africa, Europe, and USA as well. So we've done trainings in all these countries. I'd like you to see some of our clients. Just a short list of some of the organizations we've trained, including those in the countries I'd mentioned earlier. So this is just to give you an idea of some of the agencies and organizations we've trained. We've trained both government agencies and NGOs. We have some upcoming trainings on M&E, and we have this listed on our website, the course name, the courses, and the schedules as well. So I'd like to invite you to have a look at our website for you to see some of the things that we have there. And also, for those of you who'd like to dive deeper into M&E or into impact evaluation, we do have a 5-day course on that, which takes you through every single step, from theory to case studies and also field implementation. So you're welcome to view some of our trainings on our website. And on to the day's agenda. So today's session is to equip you with some practical strategies or some key concepts on measuring what matters, which is designing and conducting impact evaluations that drive evidence-based development decisions. I'd like to welcome those who are joining. Karibuni sana, welcome. So just a few quick notes. You are muted on entry, and we will use our chat panel for comments or technical issues. We are monitoring the chat panel, so feel free to input your comments on there. Also, the session is being recorded. We are recording this session, and we will share this recording later on our social media website. And we'll also share the slides and all the resources we use. All right. Okay. So I would like to get into impact evaluation, and it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker John Eric, who brings a vast amount of impact evaluation expertise in development context. So welcome, John, over to you. Karibu sana.
So thank you, Millicent, for the introduction. And once again, welcome to a participant. Like Millicent has just given an intro, we will be covering a few elements when it comes to impact evaluation. This sharing were especially our experience when it comes impact evaluation within the broader monitoring and evaluation context. And some of the elements that we're going to be looking at includes we're going to look at introduction to impact evaluation. And this one we're going to be comparing with other evaluations because sometimes there's a confusion. I've had the privilege to look at a number of terms of references which organizations do prepare, and sometimes you feel there's a bit of confusion in regards to impact evaluation and in regards to other evaluations. So we're going to look at that and try and differentiate impact evaluation and other evaluations. Of course, we look at why impact evaluation is very important and why organizations, are looking to, conduct impact evaluation. These will take us to the fundamentals of impact evaluation, some key concepts of impact evaluations, in the bigger context of monitoring and evaluation. And very importantly, is also important to understand how do we design an impact evaluation, or rather, what are the methods, for, designing an impact evaluation, which is a bit unique from other, evaluations. Okay, so that will be our agenda today. So we are looking at approximately 1 hour, 40 minutes, 1 hour, and we will try and utilize our time effectively to be able to achieve those objectives as we have outlined. So allow me just to quickly start off the presentation. I have the slides we're presenting, but I like also having that discussion around the same elements that will be projected. Even before we talk about impact evaluation, it is very important to just go back a little bit and just think about evaluation, the bigger evaluation aspect. We're talking of impact evaluation, so there is an element of evaluation there. So the question is, what is an evaluation? And of course, for those who have done evaluations, we talk about is systematic assessment of a project. And projects range from different forms and shapes, even program policies. And we want to, when you do an evaluation, to really understand, are we achieving what we intended to achieve when you do an evaluation? If you compare evaluation with monitoring, monitoring is where we talk about the routine or continuous tracking of a project, against the plan. Whereas we always have them together. We talk of, for example, you'll find we talk of monitoring and evaluation, specialist. We talk of monitoring and evaluation, components of project. But sometimes we want to look at them separately. Whereas you are supposed to, during implementation, you focus on monitoring. But then it's also very important when you're implementing to pause and reflect and systematically assess your project to see we have objectives as per our intervention logic, as per our theory of change. There are objectives that we wanted to achieve, which were driven by the problem we wanted to solve. So the question is, have we been able to actually achieve those objectives? And in summary, we can talk about what are the main aims of an evaluation. One, of course, is to ensure accountability in regards to the resources you're given. You'll say you have solved the problem, and the evidence that to show that you've solved the problem will be mostly generated by during evaluation. Because the donor will look at the resources that you allocated and the results that you've achieved, which results we are going to get them evidence during evaluation. And of course, very importantly, now we are focusing very much on learning because we understand that it's very important when you do a project, even before you replicate, even before maybe you have an opportunity to even go to another phase. What have you learned from the previous project? And what can you take to the next project? And what can you leave? So those are, the key aspects of why we do evaluation. And basically, they're also the reason why we want to do impact evaluation. Of course, impact evaluation is a bit, there's more than this, which we're going to be looking at. Still, as we try to understand impact evaluation, we have a number of evaluations that we normally conduct in projects, ranging from baseline, midterm, and some. We also have process, outcome, and impact, and we even have participatory evaluation. We have real-time evaluations. So a project can have an opportunity to carry out different types of evaluations. One, depending on the needs and also on the requirement, for example, of the different funders, all right, and the kind of information they want to get, from the field or from the beneficiaries. The three, the baseline, the midterm, and the end term evaluations, we call them timeline evaluations, meaning that during the course of our implementation, they're almost like I don't want to call it the basic, but the usual evaluations. We know when we are starting a project, we need to do a baseline. At the mid of the project, we need to do a midterm evaluation to determine where are we on track. Okay, and then do we have any recommendations for any what we call mid-course correction? And of course, when we complete a project, it's very important for us to do an end-term evaluation to look at the overall achievement of the project in regards to the objectives. Those we can say those are the the common types of evaluation. We call them timeline-based evaluation. But also sometimes there's a need to do what we call specialized evaluations, which, for example, one of them is what we call in process evaluation, which we look at how the implementation is happening. Are we implementing the project, in the right manner? So the reason why it is called process evaluation is because it looks at mostly the activities and how they're being implemented. We have outcome evaluation, which looks at change at the outcome level. It might not really be interested to look at other aspects of evaluation, but are we achieving the change at the evaluation, at the outcome level and the goal level when it comes to our project? And then we have impact evaluation, which is what we'll be discussing in this webinar, where we are looking at the attribution of the project. So if I have to, if I'm to categorize all these, evaluations, for example, I would say most of these evaluations from baseline to maybe outcomes, I would call them performance evaluations. Okay. And then impact evaluation is different from performance evaluation. One of the difference is that impact evaluations, you need to collect data from two sets of groups. One is the treatment group, which is the beneficiaries, and the other one is the control group, which is a sample of the non-beneficiaries. But the other evaluations, you just need to collect data from the beneficiaries alone. So if you're comparing impact evaluation and other evaluation, you can see it's almost like a more specialized type of evaluation. You go beyond looking at your beneficiaries and looking at who are not, also who have not benefited, and therefore how do you compare so that we can get what we call the net effect of our project or the attribution. Therefore, coming now to really understanding, the impact evaluation. The key aspect here is attribution. We want to do an impact evaluation so that we can determine the attribution of a project to, change. Yes, we can determine there is change. If I take an agriculture project, there is a improved production. But can we attribute that improved production to our intervention? And that is the question that impact evaluation tries to answer. We do a project, yes, change is there at the community level, even among our beneficiaries, but can we say this change has really been brought about by our project? So that attribution aspect is really the main, objective of impact evaluation. And to be able to do that, we, like I mentioned, we use, what we call comparison. We compare two groups. We have to have the group which is benefiting from our project, which we call the treatment group, and we have to compare it against another group, which is not benefiting from our project, which we call the control group, right? So we have to have that comparison, aspect when we're doing impact evaluation. And these I mentioned fundamentally is the main difference between an impact evaluation and what I'm calling a rigorous impact evaluation compared to performance evaluation. Where for performance evaluation, we just focus on, the beneficiaries or what you call the treatment group, but we do not come and look at the control group. So comparing this group will give us, the net effect of a project, all right? In regards to our outcomes of interest. Something also very unique around impact evaluation, like I've mentioned here, outcomes of interest. You can do a project, and in your theory of change or your intervention logic, you might have a number of changes that you want to achieve. But when you come to do an impact evaluation, you might just choose a few outcomes of interest, which you feel like maybe there's a possibility of your project attributing. So even when you are putting together your plan for an impact evaluation, your methodology, we always talk about what is your outcomes of interest for this evaluation. And that is where even we normally draw what we call our evaluation question. So you have to be very specific. So even the attribution is usually very specific. You don't just say the project has an impact. The question we always ask is impact on what? So if you're doing that agriculture project, it can be impact on crop yield. It can be impact on prices of commodities, market linkage. We have to be very very specific. And that comparison aspect is what we call a counterfactual. So when you are reading some literature around impact evaluation, you'll come around concept of counterfactual. And this is an aspect where we say impact evaluation tells us a situation in regards to what would have happened in the absence of an intervention, all right? Meaning, we are hoping that the situation will be better off. When you compare with the control group, we are hoping that our treatment group is better off than the control group. So the control group is where what would have happened when there's no intervention. But now we have an intervention. So we have to compare those two elements. So the comparison element of both groups is what we call the counterfactual situation. And this is just an illustration where we have our outcomes of interest here, and then you have to collect baseline data, and then you determine the follow-up period. And you see there's two elements. Without the program, that is a control, and with the program, that is a treatment. And when you compare these two, the net effect, the difference is what you call program impact or project impact. This is just that illustration. You have to carry out what you call statistical analysis to determine this. Using techniques like DID, PSM to be able to give you this net effect. But in simple way, this is what you are trying to to get what is the impact of a project, but it has to be an impact for a specific outcome of, outcome of interest. And what we are saying here is, you see, normally for performance evaluation, you will be able to say, if you're doing just performance evaluation, you can say from this point to here is a change, and we go home very happy. But then impact evaluation complicates the situation a little bit, because it says, are you sure that all these achievements with your beneficiaries can be, attributed to your project? And you say, maybe not. So we want to then look, those who were not part of our project, how are they? And that's where now we have to get the net effect. We say, okay, not everything can be attributed to our project. And that's how we normally craft the impact evaluation. On this, and I've seen, like I mentioned, sometimes there's, when you read some TOR, when you talk about impact evaluation and you read, then you realize not even the impact evaluation, the rigorous, the attribution kind of impact evaluation we're talking about. So I always find it's very important for, M&E practitioners to understand, especially the concept of impact in monitoring and evaluation, or in programming. Impact, the word impact means a number of things in monitoring and evaluation. One, it can refer to the ultimate results or long-term results, in a results chain. Those who have worked with organizations like FCDO, they know that the ultimate result, what we call the goal for FCDO, they refer to it as impact, in the log frame, which is the long-term results of a project. So when you refer to impact, it can refer to that. And therefore, you'll find sometimes when somebody is saying we want to do an impact evaluation, basically what they mean is, I want to determine whether the project has achieved the long-term results. Okay, so it's very important to understand which type of when you're just saying impact evaluation, what do you really mean? Somebody can actually mean that they want just to determine the long-term effects of the project. Impact on itself can also refer to one of the OECD evaluation criteria. All right, OECD evaluation criteria, we talk about relevance, we talk about effectiveness, we talk about efficiency, we talk about impact, and we talk about sustainability. The 5 criteria which we normally use for mostly performance evaluation. So impact still is there, all right, which of course usually refer to positive or negative, and intended and unintended, high-level effects of a project. Sometimes you can implement a project and maybe, some unexpected outcomes, can be realized. So impact, as part of the OECD criteria, tries to capture that. And whereas literature talk about intended, we normally move intended to effectiveness. Intended, we move it to effectiveness. So then now unintended and their long term is what we refer to the impact. So still, somebody talking about they want to do an impact evaluation. So the question should be, what exactly are they referring to? Are they referring to one of the OECD evaluation criteria? Maybe there was a policy, the project, led to a policy drafting. That can be a positive, high-level effect of a project. And the other one is now what we're calling impact as attribution. Okay, where we are looking at, what's the difference between, the treatment group and the control group, and we have any net effect to do with our project. And when we talk about now impact evaluation, we are, rigorous, what we call rigorous impact evaluation. We are talking about the evaluation which will help us to determine attribution. But what we normally advise is even if you're doing a pure impact evaluation, you can still look at these other elements in terms of, in the long term, you can also look at the, high level effect. But it's very important to just understand the difference. So that when you're crafting even your evaluation plans, you are clear which kind of impact evaluation we are looking at. So in this case, our discussion is around impact evaluation that aims to, achieve the attribution of a project. So the question is, when should you conduct an impact evaluation? And this one I have borrowed from the World Bank. World Bank is one of the pioneer institutions that has really pushed for impact evaluation. And some of the other institutions that were keen on or are keen on impact evaluation include the now the former USA, and they recommend, among other reasons, why you do want to do an impact evaluation. Because one of the issues with impact evaluation, like we said, is a more advanced type of evaluation compared to the performance evaluation, and it's a bit costly because now you see you're looking at two types of samples that you're collecting: treatment and control group. So the advice is there are a number of criteria you look at in your project. One is when the project is innovative, is a new idea, okay, and you're not very sure. And this is where you look at most of the projects. Maybe they want to implement big project, but then we do a pilot of a project. Pilots are very good with impact evaluation because we will be able to just understand whether there's any effect of this project. So when we are now scaling up, okay, as number 2 talks about scaling up, we are sure that at least our project, has an impact, has some net effect, okay. Of course, the replicability, do you plan to scale up your project, even in different settings? Maybe you can implement a project in Kenya, and then you might want to maybe implement in another country. You might want to test it through impact evaluation. Of course, don't forget that also context is very important when it comes to project implementation. Okay, so those are some of the aspects you look at. Around strategically relevant, these are projects which they're going to have maybe either they're using quite a lot of resources. Maybe they're also affecting a large number of beneficiaries. Like one of the projects that I was supporting some years back had almost 1 million beneficiaries. So you don't want to just go and dive deep in such a project. You want to give yourself an opportunity to really understand this intervention. Will it really have impact? Will it really have that net effect? So you might want to maybe do a pilot because we need to scale up to many people. We need to have these are key project, key program, that we're going to implement. And related to innovative is where you have untested, interventions. You might want to do an impact evaluation and get some evidence around the same before you actually now maybe make it public. Just go out there. And of course, the influential is the same as strategically relevant, where you are going to use the results to make some key policy decisions. You therefore need to have very hard evidence that this intervention will really, have an impact on your beneficiaries. Because you don't want an intervention where you've supported the beneficiaries, but at the end of the day, they are the same as the non-beneficiaries. That will not be so good, especially considering that you've used quite some resources on the same. All right. And still on these, we were talking about the characteristics of an impact evaluation. We are aiming to quantify the project, quantify our effect. We are trying to get causality, whether a project has caused any changes. And you can see the attribution is coming out, quite often. And here there's a note. We are talking about the performance evaluation can tell us there's a change that occurred. But when we do an impact evaluation, we now get evidence that actually the change that occurred was due to our project or a program. So we can actually really say, claim that our project or a program is actually impactful. You see, that does not mean you cannot just do performance evaluation. We always do performance evaluation. But if you want hard evidence in terms of your intervention, then it's advisable you do now the impact evaluation. There are concepts that are very important as you interact with impact evaluation. One of them is confounding factors. And the reason why even we want to do an impact evaluation and to really compare our treatment and the control is to eliminate confounding factors which can affect our beneficiaries. All right. These are factors which can affect, or we say they have an influence on outcomes of interest. All right. And they can be positive or negative. Okay. So it means if you determine whether there was change, and yes, there was change, you never know, probably the change was caused by confounding factors. And that's why now we are doing an impact evaluation, comparing with another group, which you're calling a control group, and hoping that, and we're assuming that the control group also is experiencing the same confounding factors. So that if we're able to net all those aspects in terms of treatment and the control group, what we remain with, we are calling the net effect, is devoid of the confounding factors, and we can now claim that. Otherwise, if we just say there was a change, maybe that change was brought about there by the confounding factors, right? And this is the same illustration we had, but what is the control group also has that change. It's not zero. It has that change. But this change, what we're calling the confounding effect, is being enjoyed by both the control and the treatment. So we cannot claim, even if we are looking at this, the change for the treatment, we cannot claim the whole of it from down here. Rather, we can say, okay, whatever they share, both of them, that is the confounding effect, which is very important to miners. The other concept that is very important as you look at impact evaluation is what we call the spillover effect. In programming, spillover effect is what we aim for. Because when you have your beneficiary, you have your direct beneficiaries, you aim to have indirect beneficiaries. Okay, but when you're designing an impact evaluation, sometimes the spillover, can complicate things. In this way, because you're going to do some statistical analysis, if you have a control and then you have a treatment, spillover is where the benefit moves from the treatment group to the control group. So it's like now the control group becomes your indirect beneficiaries. And then in programming, when you're doing implementation, that's really what you want. But then sometimes when you have designed your impact evaluation, you have your two groups, sometimes that becomes a challenge. So we want to also consider this spillover effect. One of the design that we're going to be discussing is RCT, and RCT has challenges with this, which we normally want to avoid so that we don't have the spillover effects, because otherwise, when you now come to do the analysis, you don't have the clear picture. We will have reduced impact because already the control have been treated. Okay? The other concept we talk about is contamination, which is very much related to spillover. But in this case, contamination is where we can say it can happen from outside, and it can affect either your treatment or your control group, right? And contamination, if it's negative, if it's positive and it affects either of the groups, now is either we have what you call false positive or false negative. Okay, if contamination, positive contamination happens to your treatment group alone, you're going to have what you call false, positive, and vice versa, right? So this is from external factors, whereas spillover is from treatment to control. So whenever we also doing this and planning, we have to consider this. Another concept which is very important is heterogeneous impact. This is an element where it's very important to even when you designing your impact evaluation, sometimes you might want to generalize that impact evaluation, but the question is among your beneficiaries. But the question is there is stratification within your beneficiaries. So the question is the impact evaluation homogeneous within your beneficiaries group, or is it heterogeneous? For example, maybe you have there's more impact among maybe, let's say, female farmers as opposed to the male farmers. So those are some of the factors that you want to consider. Allow me to look to some of the impact evaluation designs. When we are doing impact evaluation, it's very important to put together an impact evaluation. These are some of the critical aspects which are important when you're thinking about an impact evaluation. When we are doing all evaluations we do, we have to design, we have to have a methodology. Mostly for performance evaluation, we are looking at longitudinal designs. You're looking at cross section of pre and post. But there's a step which comes before when you're doing impact evaluation, okay? And that step is for creating what you talked about, the counterfactual. So even before you go to the field, whereas for research, for performance evaluation, we do a sample for our beneficiaries and we just go directly to the field. Impact evaluation, we need to create those two groups, the treatment and the control. So whenever we are talking of impact evaluation design, we are focusing on how do we assign your eligible population to either of these two groups. So now you can now start the data collection for both of those two groups. And it's one of the challenge when it comes to impact evaluation, as opposed to the other evaluations. So majorly we have two types of evaluation designs. We have experimental design and we have quasi-experimental design. When you talk about experimental design, we talk about random control trials, where from your eligible group, the control and the treatment, they are assigned randomly. So when you want to implement RCT, first of all, you cannot have drawn your beneficiaries. You have first to wait for you to be able to draw your treatment and your control group, so that now you can be able to bring, not to be able to get your beneficiaries, right? We say they are drawn randomly from the eligible. Eligible meaning you did your recruitment of your beneficiaries and they qualify based on your eligibility criteria, right? And they all qualify. Remember, one of the objectives that we want when it comes to impact evaluation, we want to ensure that both, we want to ensure as much as possible our treatment group and our control group are similar, okay? And that's why we want to do them from our eligible, population. Those who are eligible, it's only that they might not be able to benefit right now, but they're eligible. So that similarity, it means the groups you're going to draw here, they're very similar to each other. So this is just an illustration where we have eligible population, and then we have to draw randomly our treatment group and our control, right? Then we go now collect the data, the baseline data. We are going to follow this group treatment group. We are doing projects with them, but this one we are not doing anything with them. But then at the follow-up stage, maybe after a number of years, we come and then do another follow-up data collection, so that now we can be able to analyze and get our evidence. This stage one. So because you still want to have your beneficiary, that means that if, for example, you are drawing, when using RCT, you are drawing 200 treatment and 200 control, and you want 600 beneficiaries, treatment group is a subset of beneficiaries. So it means that you still have to come back to your eligible population to draw the remaining beneficiaries. Something to note is RCT, you have to design it together with the project design. It's one of the designs where you cannot start your project implementation, then you want to come and do use RCT. No. We always say, have you? So the first question usually is, do you have your beneficiary group ready? Yes. Therefore, we cannot be able to use RCT. Otherwise, if you have not drawn your beneficiary group, then you can be able to apply RCT. Now, one of the challenge of RCT, because this is random, okay? So you can have instances where these two groups, they're sharing a lot. Maybe they're neighbors, they're friends. So it means they might have what we call spillover effect, like we discussed previously, where this treatment, some of the treatment might pass on the benefit to this control. Maybe they're from the same village, all right? So that's usually one of the challenge of RCT, the spillover effect. So it means you're going to have a reduced effect because already these ones, they have been indirectly treated. The other challenge with RCT is the issue of ethical consideration. By doing sometimes a random assignment, you might bring some, some needy, household or beneficiaries here, eligible population who are needy. So if you are to rank the eligibility, those household or those community members, they should be in the beneficiaries list. But then because you have chosen randomly, you might find them in the control group. That brings some ethical issues when it comes to RCT. And to be able to handle some of those challenges, we have what we call variations of the RCT. Especially when it comes to ethical consideration, you can do what you call first-in design, where yes, you have the treatment and the control. The control later, they can come and join after maybe a few years, in the control, like these ones, 2025, 2026. Then later, they become treatment groups. So you also give them an opportunity to join the project later, to be able to benefit. So it means you have designed your project in a way that you have what you call maturity period, 2 or 3 years. So somebody is staying in the project for this number of years, then they graduate. So you do your study, you do your impact evaluation. By the end of 2026, you're done with your analysis, and therefore this cohort can therefore become a treatment group. That is one way of taking care of the challenges with RCT. The other one is a variation is cluster design. Which one? This one takes care of spillover, where instead of randomly selecting the beneficiaries directly, you use clusters. Can be villages, can be communities. So it means when you say treatment villages, it means that the people who are there, your respondents, will only be treatment. Will only be those who are treated. When you choose control villages or control communities, means in that community only respondents who have been who are controlled. So there's no issue of spillover. The other designs that we have are quasi-experimental design. Now, quasi-experimental design is a group of design, all right? It's a group of design where you have regression discontinuity, which looks at the cutoff point. It's not a very common design, but we normally use a cutoff point. It's like going to the university. There's a cutoff point. There's a pass mark. The pass mark indicates you are either a beneficiary or a non-beneficiary. All right. So then from the beneficiaries, you can be able now to draw the treatment group. And then from the non-beneficiaries, you can be able to draw the control group. But to be able to make sure that they are as similar as possible, we normally say you need to sample at the boundary. At the boundary means, if you select somebody who just was a bit lucky, above the cutoff point, and somebody who was just a bit unlucky below the cutoff point, they are not very different from each other. So you say you sample around the boundary, and that brings an element of similarities between the treatment and the control. The other design is what you call matching, propensity score matching. This one, we want to draw the two groups based on their similarities on what we call observed characteristics. Observed characteristics are mostly the demographics, like age, family size, education levels, and all those. You're saying we have eligible population. I want to draw the two groups, the treatment and the control, but instead of maybe of doing RCT, I want to match them. And this design is good because it gives you an opportunity first to, select your beneficiaries, especially, to make consideration for the most needy, beneficiaries. So you have your beneficiaries, drawn. Then from your beneficiaries, you can select now your treatment group. So the aspect now here is you still want to come back to the eligible population, to be able to draw your control group. And you do that by checking the observable characteristic of the treatment and comparing with the eligible population. So those here who match the treatment group become the control. Okay. And of course, you don't do it manually. We use a statistical software, and some of the matching characteristics can be age, sex, or all those. Mostly we use characteristics which have no confounding effect on the project, or the project has no confounding effect, meaning that our intervention is not going to make any change to that. And what the statistical software will do for us is that it will create what we call propensity scores, which shows the similarity based on the matching characteristics, right? I want to show you, because we have this number of designs, so you want to implement. So the question is, what should inform you which design you're going to use? All right. So there is a flowchart here, decision tree here, where quickly you look at your project, how it is designed. The first thing is, can a comparison group be identified? All right. So if the answer is yes, no, then you say we can only do a performance evaluation. This one, some project and some context, we might not be able to get a control group to work with. And if we cannot be able to get a control group to work with, we do a performance evaluation. And still, because we're interested to maybe just get some element of attribution, we can apply other techniques like what we call contribution analysis. You can be able to look at contribution analysis, aspect of outcome harvesting. You can also apply, like most significant change to get more evidence in terms of how much your project has contributed. Because you don't have the opportunity maybe to do, to create a comparison group, a control group. So if you can create a comparison group, yes. The question is, can the assignment be randomized? And if it's yes, then you can do RCT. Meaning, the first, the reason why when you say can it be randomized and you say yes, you have to look at many factors. For example, one is, of course, we should not have drawn the beneficiary group first. If we still have our eligible population and we have not drawn our beneficiary group, then we can use RCT. Or if the issues of ethical consideration spillover are not so much in our project, then we can do the RCT. If we cannot be able to randomize, then can we use a cutoff point? If we can be able to use a cutoff point as our eligibility criteria, then we can be able to do regression discontinuity where we're using a cutoff point for beneficiaries and control. If not, then it means that we should be able to look and explore propensity score matching. So we are saying we have RCT, RD, PSM, but also we have other methods, and other techniques are still coming, and people are still exploring which one. Sometimes there's people talk about difference in difference. So difference in difference is part of the impact evaluation, but it is more of an analytical technique. All right, not so much of a design, creating the treatment and the control, but rather it is more of analyzing the data to get your what we call the net effect, the attribution. And mostly for analysis, we can use the DID, we can use PSM. So PSM, whereas we use it for matching, we'll also use the PSM to carry out analytical, to carry out data analysis, right? So I've talked about impact evaluation attribution, but there's always the question of contribution, right? It's also very important to understand this. Attribution is where we want to ascertain that actually this change has been brought about by our project, right? But we can still determine contribution, where we have many partners, many players, and to be able to determine the attribution for a project is difficult. It's therefore advisable to explore contribution. Okay, what is your contribution in the change that has been observed? Because maybe you have not been able to determine attribution. You are doing this project, you realize, oh, my beneficiaries, they are getting support from like 4 other organizations. All right, so that might be challenging to actually attribute the change to your organization alone. So therefore, you explore contribution analysis, get evidence. You can inquire from the beneficiaries whether they're getting other support, what kind of support, how much, all right? And then you can be able to qualitatively quantify the kind of contribution. In contribution, when we gather evidence qualitatively, we also put it together in, for example, in the levels of contribution, we talk about significant contribution, which is almost like attribution. When you say significant contribution, you mean that the project did play a big part in the change that was observed. It's like saying that if the project was not there, probably the change could not have been realized, right? That's significant contribution. We talk about medium contribution, where we say, yes, your project was important, it played a key role, but also other parties, other partners, other stakeholders also played a key role. But your contribution was substantial in terms of maybe the change could have happened, but not to the effect that actually happened. And then we have low contribution or little contribution, meaning maybe your project wasn't as helpful as much. Maybe the change would have happened even without your project. As we do impact evaluation, there are some key aspects we make consideration for. One is the cost. Impact evaluation, they are a bit costly. You're collecting data from 2 samples. Sometimes even to design that we talked about these methods, RCT, PSM, and all those, they require some preliminary data. Even before you go and collect the the baseline, the major data baseline. Just to design, you require to collect data. So it's a bit costly. So you have to look at cost element when it comes to impact evaluation. Can you be able to support them? There's ethical consideration, like we've mentioned, where you are creating another group, and this group you're not providing them with the support. It therefore means that some people will be left dry, and the question of the neediest being assigned to the control group. So all those considerations within your context, you have to ask yourself: is it feasible? Okay, is it practical to do that? The issue of sample size is also very important. One of the important component of doing impact evaluation is you have to come up with a good sample size, which will help you to, have what you call a rigorous impact evaluation, and to avoid what you call, the errors when it comes to making conclusions. And we are talking of false negative or false positive. So your sample size has to be ideal, which involves, some element of sample size calculation. The effect size is how much impact, for example, do we expect? In research, and which impact evaluation is part of it, and especially even connected to sample size calculation, we always ask ourselves, we're going to the field, but how much, we call it minimum detectable change, do you want to achieve from these results? So looking at all these components, they can inform you, before you start, an impact evaluation. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll want to stop there for now. This was just an overview of impact evaluation. There's more to this, because if you're looking at the major aspect of impact evaluation, you're looking at designing the impact evaluation. You're looking at the evaluation designs. Of course, part of the planning, you're looking at the sample size calculation, and then you're looking at now doing the analysis to determine the net effect or the attribution of your project. McQ, the evaluation design and the sample size calculation should happen at the baseline. All right. So that's why if you're planning to do an impact evaluation, baseline is very important. You don't just do, just a normal baseline. No. You do a baseline which is able to collect data which you're going to compare during the end line. Actually, for impact evaluation, most of the work happens at the baseline. At the end line is more of you collect the follow-up data and then you do the analysis. But the designing, all these aspects, all these considerations, we are going to put them, we are going to consider them at the very beginning during the baseline design. So, thank you very much. I want to, so that we are within the time of this timeline of this webinar. Now we will do a Q&A session. The questions, I see a number of them. They're here. We can still and welcome our dear participants. So if you have any question, you can quickly drop it on the chat. We're still picking your emails. We'll share the slides and other follow-up materials. So this session, I want to welcome any question. You can drop it on the chat, then we can quickly respond to it. Feel free, dear participants, to drop questions. We can respond to them. So seeing some of us asking about the recordings, we'll share. So the recordings, we are going to upload them in our platforms, but also we'll share the links to the recordings so that you can be able to go through them. Also including these materials that we're having. Dr. King is asking whether we'll have another session. Yes, we can have another session because impact evaluation is very broad. Like I mentioned, there's for now I've just let me say touched on the overview on a bit of design. We are talking about sample size calculation, which is the whole bit of you know thing to be able to get the right sample size. Then we talk about econometric modeling, which is now where we do these rigorous impact evaluation. Okay. So there is a question. So there's a question of, and can an evaluation be still classified as an impact evaluation if it focuses solely on assessing an intervention contribution rather than establishing direct causality? So Angelique, like we mentioned there, we have different, I can say, ways of looking at what is an impact evaluation. And, for this one, it depends on what impact you're looking at. But if it's the attribution based or the rigorous impact evaluation, we might not consider when you're talking of contribution as because you see, we talked about there's contribution and there's attribution. Okay. So whereas it has those aspects, it's very important. Actually, the main thing is, are you, if you want to put it under attribution-based impact evaluation, the question is, are you looking at the counterfactual? So actually, that's the main thing that we need to look at. Are we looking at the counterfactual? So if you're looking at the counterfactual, that you're comparing the treatment and the control, then we are going to consider it as an impact evaluation. But remember, I didn't say, even when you say you want to do an impact evaluation and you're looking at the long-term effect, I didn't say you are wrong. Call it an impact evaluation. But as many practitioners, you just need to be very clear which impact evaluation you're really looking at on that. But attribution-based impact evaluation has to have a counterfactual to qualify as so. Yeah. Keep the question coming. We have 5 minutes. So there's a question here: how can one manage expectations during baselines? This is a question like got the other day. First of all, is sometimes when we're doing implementation, you find maybe there's a delay in funds. We've designed, we've planned, we've put our plans ready, and we are waiting to implement the project. Sometimes the donor might not have the funds, or maybe so many factors play, and you find we just jump into implementation only for us to come back and maybe later realize that we would have needed that baseline, or maybe when maybe our donor asks us where's the baseline report, and we come running. So baseline, as part of as many practitioners, is very important together with other evaluation, because it forms the foundation or the benchmark against which we are going to conduct evaluations. When you have a very good baseline, then it means it's very important. It would be very easy for you to do some comparative analysis. And when you're doing an impact evaluation, comparative analysis is key, all right? Because you're comparing what you call before and after situation. for both the treatment and then the control. Around for treatment group is very easy. You collect data from them, you come and implement the project with them, you are with them. The challenge comes with the control group. And I remember in another forum we were discussing this. Comes with the control group. And this is borders around the issues of ethical considerations. Because you can imagine you collect data from a group and you're not going to maybe do anything with them. It's not the best thing. But that's what you're saying. You can either look at ways of doing it. Sometimes we give them an alternative intervention, which will not have a confounding effect on our outcomes of interest. All right. For example, if you're doing agriculture project, you might want with the control to work around maybe nutrition. As long as the nutrition issue was not part of the outcomes of interest, maybe the mothers there, you can give them some, educative sessions around cooking, around, under 5 nutrition. So also they feel something is happening. And but sometimes these borders around ethical considerations. And one of the best way we've seen it is where you plan also this control somehow will have the opportunity to benefit. So it's only that there will be delayed benefit, but at the end of the day, they will be able to benefit. So there's a question here, a very interesting one. Assuming that impact evaluation exercise reveals that the needs and expectations of the beneficiaries were not met, how do you report this to the donor? So the question is, was the exercise objective? The right methodologies, the results valid. So even if we, redo the same evaluation, we'll do an evaluation again, we'll get the same results. If yes, there was validity and reliability in our impact evaluation, first of all is to acknowledge the way the results are. So many actually, unfortunately, you find there are a number of impact evaluation where you find it's almost like even the control group are doing better. But one of the reasons why sometimes you find that is because of the issue we mentioned of contamination, where you might find even your a control group is later contaminated. Maybe another project comes, another organization comes in, and they are supporting this control group. So you might assume maybe, or the results which will be there will be that your project did not have the impact, but otherwise, is a false negative. One of the important things to do in implementation and evaluation is always keep a close eye on your, let me say, on your beneficiaries or on your sample, whether it's treatment or control. Always keep an eye. There's a project we implemented, and during implementation, as we go to the field, we realized that the control were being contaminated. So we flagged that out, and we knew even during the end line when we shall be doing an impact evaluation, most likely, the contamination will affect our results. So as long as you're able to collect such, information, then you can be able to justify, or you can be able to, justify maybe why maybe the impact is not as it's supposed to be. All right. But otherwise, if everything is okay, we report the way it is. We just be very objective. But of course, there's a way you use a diplomatic language in reporting, when it comes to results. Okay. So there's also another question, which will be the last question we'll take. What are the tools or software necessary to conduct an impact evaluation? So, when it comes to the designing, maybe there's no specific impact evaluation design, there's no, or planning, no specific tool. When you come to sample size calculation, Of course, we use formulas, but of course, I've seen also some online tools. But because we work with parameters, you have some online tools for sample size calculation. Like ours, we have, put the formulas in, Excel tools, which you can be able to just feed, the values and, come up with the sample size. But mostly the tools and the softwares, you're going to use them when you are estimating the actual, impact, the attribution. And one of the tool which is common we use is Stata. Stata has that capability to do what we call econometric modeling, which are which is the basis for impact evaluation analysis. Whether you're doing DID or you're doing PSM. So in terms of statistical tools, Stata will, be very instrumental. Even itself, you can be able to use it to actually even do, sample size speculation. Yep. So I think with that, because of time allocated for my session, I want to thank you for listening. I know we will have another opportunity to interact and to explore more on impact evaluation and also on other elements of monitoring and evaluation. I just want to thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope to have another opportunity, even after this webinar, to learn together on these, many concepts and other areas of interest. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I want to hand over the session to Millicent.
Okay. Thank you, John. Thank you very much for that insightful overview on impact evaluation. I hope that we've all come away with some actionable insights, and I also hope that the session has given you some tools and hopefully a clear roadmap for measuring what matters, which was also the title of our webinar. And so we are coming up on time, like John mentioned. We've actually exceeded by around 15 or so minutes. So we'd like to just thank you very much. But before that, I want to remind you that the recording will be available on our social media platforms, which include LinkedIn and also Facebook. We will also be sharing the slide deck that John used. We'll share the slide deck and the other resources or other links for our upcoming schedules. We'll share those on email. And you're all welcome to visit our website and see what we have there. Once again, this has been courtesy of Devimpact Institute. We welcome you to register to look out for our future webinars. We do have this. We roll out the webinars each month, so we have new webinars each month in different areas, and we'd like you to look out for those and join us in them. So yes, on behalf of Devimpact Institute, I'd like to thank John Eric for that a very insightful presentation, and also to each of you for attending this webinar. Thank you for your questions, thank you for your engagement, and thank you for your participation. Thank you to everyone. We see some familiar faces, Angelique and Michael. Thank you all for joining. And I hope you have a great rest of the afternoon, and we will see you at our next event. All right. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Angelique.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.